murdered along with 11 others just down the street at the Aurora Theater massacre. 2 days after that event, over 10,000 members of this community came to this space and acknowledged that crisis. And when the 12 names were read out loud, they responded back, "We will remember." As terrible as what our community faced in the days after July 20th, 2012, it pales in comparison to what others have experienced since then. The mass shootings have continued. Some would say they have even gotten more frequent. And they recently came to my friend's hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 were murdered and dozens more injured. We all know that mass shootings are just one part of this crisis. We know over 100 people die every day in this country by gun violence. Over half of those die by suicide, and again, half of those are veterans who proudly served our country. Economists estimate that gun violence impacts our economy by at least $229 billion every year. That costs each and every citizen in excess of $700. Beto O'Rourke came here to Aurora tonight to see what our community has been through and how we have risen up from that tragedy that night in July of 2012. He has taken the conversation of gun violence to a new level. But that conversation has been impacted not only by what he has heard, but also by what he has encountered firsthand in his hometown and in other sites of these tragedies across the country. He has a bold agenda that has us talking like we have never have in the past, and his plans can take us to a place where we no longer will live in fear of going to the movies, to our places of worship, or shopping for back-to-school items, and our children can feel safe in their classrooms. When this event is over, I just want to make a quick reminder to everybody. Right here in the back, on the other side, here is the 720 memorial for the 12 that were murdered and the 70 that were injured. If you haven't been over there yet, please take a moment and walk on through there and see what that looks like. Thanks again for everybody coming out tonight. Let's get to it. Please welcome my friend, Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, how is everybody doing? Thank you so much for being here and for welcoming us. And my apologies that we're a little bit late. Our plane was delayed coming in, but we got here as quickly as we could. And I understand that I was preceded by someone that I would have loved to have listened to, Martin O'Malley. How did he do? Yeah? He's my hero. And I'm so grateful that he was here and that he had a chance to speak and you all had a chance to listen to him. And I'd love to have another round of applause for Tom Sullivan, who is another one of my heroes. Somebody that I've read about, someone I've listened to, but never had a chance to meet. And to be here with him, to be able to understand his public service and from where it was born and what it is he's trying to do. And the connection that he's making to all of us on an issue that could not be more important at this moment in this country, and especially this community. He has our undying gratitude and is inspiring not just the people of Aurora, Colorado, but people all across this country. This moment, which will define us forever, which will decide so much, not just for those who are alive today, but every generation that follows, calls upon every single one of us to decide that things don't just happen to us. That we have a chance together in a government of, by, and for the people to decide the future of this country on an issue like gun violence. What you have seen here in this community what Tom and so many others have survived, the pain that we share with you in El Paso, Texas, where on August 3rd, 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured, someone who drove more than 600 miles with an AK-47, a weapon designed, engineered, and sold to militaries all over the world because it is excellent at killing people effectively, efficiently, in as great a number as possible. Something so obscene that when that weapon came in, the killer's mother called the police in Allen, Texas, the city that they lived in, and said, "What in the hell does my son need with this weapon? You don't need it to hunt. It's not practical for self-defense. He's not in the army. What do I do? Give me some help here." And the police in Allen, Texas said, "I'm sorry, ma'am. Nothing we can do. That was legally purchased. Good luck." A racism that is foundational, systemic, and endemic, that is part of who we are for as long as we have existed as a country, for as long as Europeans have been in North America. You can go back 400 years ago. First time that someone was kidnapped in West Africa, brought here against their will, August 20th, 1619, set foot on this continent and began to build the greatness and the wealth and the success that neither they nor their descendants would ever fully be able to participate in. That racism, structural, still with us in every single part of American life, brought out into the open, welcomed into the public space by this president, who not only told 4 women of color duly elected by their constituents to the U.S. House of Representatives to go back to their country, and you know exactly what that means, who not only described Mexican immigrants who commit crimes at a far lower rate than anyone born in this country as rapists and criminals, who called asylum seekers, who, you know this as well as I, travel here more than 2,000 miles if they're coming from the northern triangle of Central America, as desperate and vulnerable and defenseless as a human being can be. Very often kids by themselves, if they're lucky, with a parent. Many have traveled by foot, some atop a train, known as the Beast or La Bestia. And to them, this president directs his scorn and his hatred and the violence of this country, calling them predators and animals and infestation and warning of an invasion. And in this very year, in the state of Florida, at one of these Make America Great Again rallies, he's warning of this invasion and these people coming to get us or to take our jobs or to kill us or to do us harm. All lies. And he says, what do we do to stop them? Someone yells out, shoot them. The crowd there roars in laughter and in consent. And the president smiles and he laughs as well, giving that person and that killer his assent in terms of what they're going to do. Heard loud and clear by that young man in Allen, Texas, the racism, the rage, the intolerance that fueled him, that direction he was now given by the president, traveling all the way to El Paso, Texas, to, as he would later tell police, kill Mexicans, to repel that invasion that he describes in the manifesto that he posts online. This was not an act of nature. This was not an act of God. This wasn't just a disaster that befell our community. This is a violent, racist country with a racist in the White House who's directing that violence against the most vulnerable among us, including communities of immigrants. So when this happens in El Paso, Texas, we must connect the dots for our fellow Americans so that they understand the cost and the consequence of Donald Trump, so that they understand the cost and the consequence of our failure collectively, because all of us are the government, to address these foundational and systemic problems that we have in the United States of America right now, but also up to every single one of us as a people. Y no me importa if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, or that you live here in Colorado and I live in Texas. Before we are anything else, we are Americans and human beings first. And to cause problems, that we have in this country right now, there is a human solution. When it comes to gun violence, we can decide together, regardless of the differences, that not only will we support and implement universal background checks and red flag laws and an end to the sales of these weapons of war, but to these AK-47s and AR-15s, more than 15 million out there, every one of them a potential instrument of terror, we will buy back each and every single one. Call them home, off the streets, out of our homes. No one should live with the kind of fear that our fellow Americans live with right now. Kids worried about being hunted down in the hallways of their schools, killed in the classrooms where they sit. This is wrong, and we do not have to accept it. It is not our future, it is not our fate, it is not our fortune. It is upon every single one of us to do the right thing. And right now it looks like the people of this country are well ahead of those who purport to represent them. Republicans and Democrats alike. They need to hear you loud and clear on this moment. So, are you with me on this? This is our chance to do the right thing while we still have time. And not only must we defeat Donald Trump, as important as that is to do, but we've got to address those conditions, the environment in this country, of which he is a symptom. When we're talking about racism in America, it's not just in those who are targeted because of their difference from the majority, in terms of who they love or to whom they pray, the color of their skin, or how many generations they can count themselves an American. It is the fact that over the last 3 years, hate crimes have been on the rise, every single one of them. It is the fact that on the day that the president signed an executive order attempting to ban Muslim travel to the United States, the mosque in Victoria, Texas was burned to the ground. It is the fact in El Paso, Texas, listening to a third grade girl at LBJ Elementary, Mexican American, beautiful, comes up to me and says, "Why does the president not like me?" And when I tell that story in Houston, Texas, someone comes up and says, "That resonates with us because our third grade girl came home from school yesterday. She's not Mexican American, she's Muslim, and she thinks she's in the wrong country." What does that do to her head, to her conception of herself, to what she thinks she can contribute to the greatness of this country, whether or not this is even her country to begin with? When we take a wider approach, see this through the lens of our history, confront the fact that there is 10 times the wealth today in white America than there is in black America, that there are 2.3 million people behind bars as we enjoy this beautiful sky, our freedom, one another's company, and this democracy, and that prison population is disproportionately comprised of people of color, that we have a maternal mortality crisis in this country, owing in part to the fact that we continue to close down options for reproductive health care for the women of this country, making it harder for them to make their own decisions about their own body. We have to acknowledge that it's 3 times as deadly for women of color in the United States of America, that this is in every facet and aspect of American life, and we will not solve it one issue or one proposal or one policy at a time. We have to get to the root of this. We have to tell the full American story, which should include every single American story. That's why, as president, I will sign into law the reparations bill offered by Sheila Jackson Lee to make sure that we repair this damage that has been done and continue to work to ensure that it is not visited on the generations that follow ours right now. That is an opportunity that we have at this moment. But as Martin would tell me, we cannot fear the future. It belongs to the bold. It belongs to every single one of us as Americans who will claim it. To those that we know in Beaumont, in Houston, in Southeast Texas right now, who are undergoing the 4th 500-year flood in just the last 6 years, we'd like to think they're good for the next 2,000 years. But we know that they're not, because the scientists tell us that those floods that we see there, the droughts in North Texas, the fires in California are becoming more pronounced, more devastating, more deadly, and pale in comparison to what we see going forward, unless we accept the responsibility to do something about it, that this also is not an act of God, it is not a natural disaster, it is the effects of our emissions and our inaction in the face of the facts and the science and the truth. And we have this singular opportunity that lasts no more than 10 years to free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels, to embrace renewable wind and solar energy and the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come with it, to make sure that every single one of us does all that we can. No half steps, no half measures, no half the country, all of America standing up at this defining, deciding moment of truth for all of us here and for every generation, every person who will succeed us on this planet. That is our opportunity right now to ensure that when we have the chance, whether it is gun violence, whether it is climate change, whether it is rewriting our immigration laws in our own image, to make sure that this country understands that if immigration is a problem, it is the best possible problem the United States of America have. To know that healthcare, primary healthcare, your ability to afford your prescriptions, be able to see a mental health care provider without worrying about a copay or getting arrested on purpose, should be something that is a human right, not a function of luck or privilege or circumstance. You can count on it so that you can live to your full potential and fulfill your promise. These are all opportunities that all of us have at this moment. But we've got to be strong together. We've got to bring everybody in. We can't count anyone out or take anyone for granted. And that's the way that we're running this campaign. That's the way that we defeat Donald Trump, and that's the way that we bring a very divided country back together again. We saw a preview of that in the state of Texas. Last year, we went to every single one of the 254 counties of that state. We didn't care how red, how blue, how big, how small. We showed up to listen to you and to bring you in to the conversation. We went to places like Archer County, going into Mern's Cafe for a standing room only town hall, about 12 people who showed up in Archer City. Before we walk in, someone shows me a black and white photo of their dad talking to the last Senate candidate from either party to show up in Archer County. It was Congressman Lyndon Baines Johnson, and the year was 1948. He had the benefit of a helicopter that he was touring the state with, landed on the courthouse grounds, walked over to the American Legion Hall, and listened to those whom he wanted to serve and represent before he asked for their vote. And this guy says, my dad, who lived here his entire life, I, who've lived here my entire life, have not seen a candidate from either party since. It's been 70 years since someone showed up. And I don't know how many more votes we won in Archer County over the last Democrat, maybe one, maybe two. But at the end of the day, we won more votes than any Democrat had in the history of the state of Texas. We won independence for the first time in decades, and nearly 500,000 Republicans joined our cause as well, not despite, but because of that progressive agenda that we brought to every single part of Texas. And in conclusion, before I take your questions, let me say this. I know that it is not politically convenient or easy to hear that we want to have a mandatory buyback of every single AR-15 and AK-47. I know that there are owners of these weapons here with us today, and many of them, the vast majority, are responsible gun owners and want to make sure that they do the right thing. But I will tell you this, so many of those gun owners are also the parents of children or the grandparents of kids who just started school. And I cannot tell you how many of them have approached me, Republicans and Democrats alike, who said, what you said on that debate stage on Thursday, though I'm a gun owner, though I'm a Republican, though I would never vote for you, is exactly what I feel right now, exactly what needs to happen in this country at this moment. So let's resolve to bring every single person in, gun owners, non-gun owners alike, Republicans, independents, and Democrats, and do this all for this country we love at this defining, deciding moment of truth. Thank you all for being here today. Very grateful. And we're going to take some questions. Cynthia has a microphone. She will bring it out to you.
Hi, my name is Abigail Wehrman. I'm from Aurora. And this is a huge issue for me because my mom's an elementary school teacher. And I think that a lot of kids here, and teenagers in America too, it's created this sort of collective PTSD among our nation's youth. And I just want to know, what will you do to give us the peace of mind that we deserve in our schools?
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question. Listening to you, meeting you, is not only inspiring, it is, there's a healthy fear that I have of you. I fear your judgment. I fear our failure as a country if we cannot deliver for you at this moment. I fear the judgment of my kids. They're 12, 11, and 8. And they're asking us on a pretty regular basis about not if, but when someone's going to come into their school with a gun. They're trained for it right now. When that shooter came into the Walmart and began to kill people, there were a lot of kids in that Walmart. They were there because their parents were selling lemonade and horchata and licuados to raise money to send a girls' team to a soccer tournament in Tucson. And luckily, all the girls survived, but they survived in large part because they'd been trained what to do when a shooter comes into their school. They all ran for the bakery, hid under the tables there, and thank God for the baker at that Walmart who brought them all in. Because the killer approached the door to where that bakery was and said, "Hey kids, I know you're in there. Come out." That is something they will live with forever. And meeting those kids and their parents who are imploring me to do everything, they say, screw the polls and your political prospects and whatever it means for you as a candidate, just say the right thing, goddammit, while you have the chance to do that. I'm going to do that because I want to make sure that we deliver. And what I have found is that your sentiment, the words that I've been saying, are very reflective of how this country feels. The politics, for whatever reason, have not caught up to us. Let's see if we can change the politics with our resolve and your inspiration. Thank you for being here. Very grateful.
Hello, thank you so much for taking my question. My name is Lauren, and I drove down here from Rifle, Colorado to speak with you today. I was one of the gun-owning Americans that heard your speech and heard what you had to say regarding, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15s and your AR...
Let's be respectful, let's be respectful.
Well, I am here to say, hell no, you're not. So, with that, I would like to know how you intend to legislate evil, because it is not the gun, it is the heart of the man that does that. We all have stories, excuse me?
Let's allow her to finish, please.
We can all have these stories, we all have the experiences. I was living in Aurora during Columbine. I had just recently moved when the Aurora shootings happened, yet I have very close ties here. Yet all of those people were there defenseless. They had no way to defend themselves against a crazed shooter. So I want to know how you intend to legislate the hearts of men and leave American citizens like myself, American mothers. I have 4 children, I'm 5'0", 100 pounds, cannot really defend myself with a fist.
You don't need an AK-47.
It's okay, let's allow her to finish.
I don't have my AR-15 today, I have my block. Don't worry, sir, I have your back. Anyway, I want to know how you're going to legislate that, because a criminal by defense breaks the law. So all you're going to do is restrict law-abiding citizens like myself. We all know that you, sir, have a criminal history, and I understand that burglars do not like armed defense.
It's okay.
Yes, sir. Burglars do not like armed defense, yet that is a right that we have that shall not be infringed in America.
Okay, I really appreciate the question. And the presumption, and this, can we get the microphone on a different channel because it keeps cutting out? There's this presumption that we are just, I guess, inherently evil. because you ask how are we going to legislate this, and the 40,000 gun deaths in America, just must be something wrong with us. Or gets back to this idea that I began my comments with: is this just our fate?
600,000 people died of heart disease.
This is. It's difficult to do this if we're all talking at the same time. I just gave the microphone to someone who vehemently and vigorously disagrees with me. Heard her out, and I'm now trying to answer her question. So, will you allow me to do that? Le agradezco. Gracias. I refuse to accept that. This doesn't happen in any other country. There are 329 million of us. There are 390 million guns. No other country has this kind of ratio. No other country allows its citizens to buy weapons that were designed for war. And you probably know this as well as I do, but let's listen to those trauma-based surgeons that I met who treated the victims in El Paso. Many of them have served in the military. And they told me that the wounds that they treated in El Paso were no different than the wounds that they treated on the battlefield in Iraq, in Afghanistan. The hole that high impact, high velocity round blows out your back is the size of an orange. The kinetic energy of that round is spent inside of your body. It just shreds it to pieces. It tumbles through and destroys those organs. Memo Garcia in El Paso, Texas, just heard from his wife, 17 surgeries so far. They're still trying to repair his intestines so he can absorb nutrients. I don't know when or if that's ever going to happen for him. Why would we allow this? You don't need it to hunt. You don't need it for self-defense. So why not? The logic of your argument is, why shouldn't we allow you to have a bazooka or drive a tank down the street? Where you're going to use it responsibly, and criminals are the only ones who aren't going to use those bazookas responsibly. This situation we have here is a function of the cowardice of those in positions of public trust and power. They fear the NRA. They fear exchanges like this one. They fear doing something lest they lose their next election. I don't have that fear. You shouldn't either. So let's do the right thing. We have the chance to do that. Appreciate it.
Okay, here's our next question. And then I'm going to ask everybody to please not yell out. Be respectful to everybody that's here. We have children here. Please be respectful.
Thanks for taking my question.
Yes.
My name is Evan Todd, and I'm a survivor of the Columbine Massacre. I was the first student that was shot in the library, and I was the last one to talk to the two murders before they committed suicide. My question, well, I understand that you want to implement a mandatory buyback for ARs and AK-47s. None of my classmates were murdered with those weapons. 50% of mass murders don't happen with those weapons. Don't you think it's time to get rid of all semi-auto firearms?
Sir, thank you for being here. You and Tom, and unfortunately too many people in Aurora, have more basis in this conversation than almost anyone else in this country. And sometimes there is an argument made that if a given proposal or policy would not have prevented a given gun crime or tragedy or massacre, well then we can't do it, or we shouldn't do that. We know that universal background checks will save lives, because in those places they've been adopted, they have saved lives. We know that red flag laws, when someone is displaying a tendency to harm themselves or someone else and has a firearm, that we can stop them before it is too late. We know that ending the sale of assault weapons saves lives, because we've tried that in this country before and it worked. We've seen that happen in Australia along with a mandatory buyback. They estimate 16 mass murders, massacres have been stopped in that country alone by taking that incredibly tough, important public policy decision. And so, to your point, I want to listen to you on this conversation. I want to be guided by you. I want to listen to others who disagree with me on this issue to make sure that we get it right. But I'm going to put the lives and the well-being and the safety of my fellow Americans before I put anything else, certainly before I put a gun, or the gun manufacturers, or the gun lobby, or the NRA. So I would love to have, sir, I would love to have your help. If you want to sit down with us and talk about the kinds of weapons that are going to be important to be regulated, I'm here with you and want to listen to you.
Why aren't you calling for all?
Well, why not ban all weapons?
All semi-autos. There's the murders happen with semi-autos. Why not call for all ban on all semi-autos?
This is the criteria that makes sense to me.
You gotta start somewhere.
If that weapon was designed to kill people and does so effectively, efficiently, in a great number, then we should no longer be selling it to one another. If we have high capacity magazines, a drum that holds 100 rounds, no reason any single one of us should, you don't need 100 rounds to hunt deer or to protect yourself in your home. You need that to go to war. And you should only have that if you're in the armed services of the United States of America. So that's the criteria that I would support.
Okay,
So I appreciate it.
here's our next question right here.
Hi, my name is Lechuga. I'm also from El Paso, Texas. But
El Chuco.
I live here now. Anyway, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I use these weapons that you're talking about, and I saw what could happen. It is mass destruction. I mean, this is destructive weapons. And not why anybody would want one of those weapons here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Lechuga. Thank you for your service, too.
Right back.
So, to your answer, lady, I was a gun owner. And I thought, I have a 23-year-old daughter, college student, works, driving from CU. I was like, Mija, you have to protect your businesses. They hit my hometown. They just went grocery shopping. And they went school shopping. I turned that in. Hey, no kid, no family should go. We're going through. Go as strong. Any of you ever go to El Paso, we're a loving city. We take everybody. So no, this doesn't go here. And they're saying, you're right. Yeah, you have a right. But we have a right to send kids to school. We have a right to go to work. We have the right to live a life without fear. El Paso strong. Beto, you're there. Yes, ma'am. El Paso strong.
El Paso strong. Thank you. Thank you for being here, for saying that. Thank you.
Here we go. Next question back here.
Hi, Mr. O'Rourke. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to Aurora.
Thank you.
My thing is this. I know everybody has the right to bear arms, but my father and my stepmother were murdered at their home by some young people that had guns they should not have had. And I'm saying to everyone, you know, I understand we all have the right to bear arms. We don't need any military-style weapons. I was in the military. I'm retired military. You do not need that to go to a theater. You don't need that to go to Walmart. Okay, we gotta protect our society. If we don't do it, who else is gonna do it for us?
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, and thank you for your service to the country. Thank you, man.
Okay, we're gonna come up here. Give me just a...
Yeah, I'm gonna make sure, Cynthia.
Here we go. I'm coming up here. Right here.
Oh, okay. Beto, my name is Mr. Kenny Sorrow. I'm a veteran of the Vietnam War, 21 years. And I know weapons of mass destruction because I had an M14 when I was in the military. And that was to protect myself against the enemy. We don't need an AR-15 or any assault weapon in this country to kill people. Why? Why we need it? You know, it won't kill the deer. It'll probably destroy the deer, but we don't have a weapon like that to kill people. You know, and I was for Vice President Biden and Sanders, but now that I know you're for against guns and assault weapons, I'm for you right now.
questions.
Hi, my name is Alini Cardozo. I was born in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil. When I was 3 years old, my mom met my stepfather and fell in love. And we moved to Houston, Texas and lived there till I was 12. I've been in this country since I was 3.5. I am American in every single way. I believe in the Constitution of America. I believe in freedom of speech, of listening to everybody around me. And I get when people talk about illegal immigration. They want the good guys or whatever the fuck that means. And I understand that vehemently, but I came to this country legally. I lived here for almost 21 years. It took me 5 years to get my citizenship. It took me a year and a half after paying $650 of my own money as a part-time lifeguard to apply for citizenship. It then took a year and a half for them to even send me a letter saying, hey, we want your fingerprints, even though they have had my fingerprints since I was 4 years old. It took them another year and a half for me to go into a building, go have an interview, and when they realized, hey, you've been through K through 12, you know American history, I'm gonna ask you 3 questions. Do you know how many Senate members we have? 100, maybe? They were like, okay, come back in like 30 minutes, we're gonna do a ceremony, and you get to be a citizen now. Like the entire system, so crazy. So yeah, talk about illegal immigration, but talk about legal immigration. Like how are we gonna reform the fact that people have been in this country, they love this country, they would love to serve this country, but you won't give them the right to be here.
Thank you for being here, and thanks for saying that. And this is what I'm talking about in terms of rewriting our immigration laws in our own image, to look like Colorado or Texas or the United States of America. What if we decided that the more than 1 million dreamers who are just as American in any way that is meaningful as anyone else in this country become U.S. citizens and never again live in fear of being deported back to some place whose language they do not speak, where they no longer have family, where if we send them there and against those long odds they're successful, they're going to be successful for that place and not this one, and legalize their parents and their brothers and sisters and the millions here working the toughest, hardest, most backbreaking work in the United States of America, allow them to contribute even more as legal permanent residents and ultimately as U.S. citizens, and then ensure that there is a safe, speedy, to your point, and legal path to come join family or work a job or go to school or flee persecution or save the life of your kids, as so many people are trying to do right now. That is us living to our full potential and our promise. And listen, as on guns, I feel like Democrats are in some way culpable. We've so often been Charlie Brown with the football set up. And look, we're gonna have all these mass internal deportations. We're gonna vote for the wall, and then we're gonna get comprehensive immigration reform. We never get comprehensive immigration reform. We continue to demonize and vilify immigrants and communities of immigrants. El Paso, Texas is one of, if not the safest cities in the United States of America. Not despite, but because of the fact that it's a city of immigrants and the sons and daughters of asylum seekers and refugees. Nothing to be afraid of, everything to celebrate, the example for the rest of the country. And so that's why when I'm president, I'm gonna make sure that we lead on this issue, non-defensively, non-apologetically, just proud of who we are, rewriting those laws so that you and everyone here has a chance to be great. So thank you, thanks for being here. Grateful.
Right behind you, and we're gonna do 2 more.
Hey, Beto, thanks for coming out to Colorado. Lots of heavy questions. I'm gonna try to keep it a little lighter. Tomorrow's the big Area 51 raid. So I know every single presidential candidate has promised it, but if you're president, gonna let us know about aliens? Yeah?
Yes. First time I've been asked this of all the hundreds of town halls that we've done. So thank you. Yeah, and you've got my commitment here, and it's on videotape now, right? Or on Facebook.
Okay, this
yes.
is our last question.
Congressman, thank you so much for your leadership on this issue, for speaking to the urgency of this moment this crisis demands. My concern is about our democratic institutions and getting any of these progressive ideas passed. Democrats have to net 3 seats in the Senate in 2020, keep the House, take the White House, and then because of the intransigence of the Republicans in the Senate, we have to abolish the filibuster. Then we have to unite our own caucus, which includes Joe Manchin and John Tester, and then any of even the most modestly progressive pieces of legislation will end up in the courts that Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump have stacked with hyper-partisan right-wing extremists, and eventually end up on the floor of the Supreme Court and will be struck down by, let's call them what they are, Republican operatives. It's hard for me to have any hope that anything will ever really change. What's your plan to overcome all these failures of our democracy and what's your solution to give us back a government that's beholden to the will of the people?
Yeah, great question. You really make a good point that we've got our work cut out for us. Not only do we have but 10 years to act on climate change, not only are we losing 40,000 of our fellow Americans to gun violence, not only do we have more than 10 million living in constant fear of deportation, though they're contributing right now to the greatness of this country, we have the most dysfunctional democracy on the planet today. One that has been captured by those who can pay not just for influence and access, but the outcomes that are otherwise inexplicable. Why do we pay more for prescription medications than any other people on the face of the planet? Though we invested in the research and development, the clinical trials, we buy them from Medicare and Medicaid and TRICARE and VA beneficiaries. It's because those pharmaceutical corporations who can buy access to the members of Congress and literally write the legislation that will disproportionately benefit them to the exclusion of everyone else. So what if we use this campaign as a model that has not taken a single dime from a single political action committee, no lobbyists, no corporations, no special interests, just all people all the time, and mandate that by federal law, that the federal office holder, from the president to the members of Congress, will be able to take those PAC checks or listen to lobbyists. Instead, they're going to be listening to you, accountable and responsive to the American people. What if we had a new Voting Rights Act that ensures that there is no barrier in our way when we want to go to the ballot box? Stacey Abrams would be the governor of the state of Georgia right now if we hadn't purged hundreds of thousands of people from the voter rolls right there. What if we had automatic and same-day voter registration and added tens of millions more? Everyone who has a conviction but has done their time and paid the price, registered to vote automatically as well. Everyone able to lift up their voice, cast their ballot. This democracy starts responding to people once again. And then lastly, and not everyone might agree on this one, certainly not all Democrats that I've served with do, but what if we had, in addition to an end to big money in politics, an end to gerrymandering where members of Congress choose their voters instead of the other way around? What if we also had term limits so that we constantly refresh our Congress so that it looks like the people who are here today, reflects the genius of this country, and ensures that we're reflecting the urgency that we feel on every single challenge before us. That is the opportunity before us right now. As great as this moment of peril is, I'm confident it is going to produce the greatest that this country has ever seen. We will live up to our promise, fulfill our potential at this moment. We just have to decide that we're going to do it. Are you with me on this? I'm with you on this. Thank you for being here today. Very grateful. Gracias.
I missed one right down here in front. There's one right here that I missed. I'm sorry. Here we go.
Thank you.
Right here.
You know what? We're going to take one more. Okay.
I want to thank you for coming to Colorado. You are a breath of fresh air and hope. I look forward to seeing you next week for your birthday in Tucson, Arizona.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you all for being out here today. Thank you very much.